Leah, very rarely do we have repeat guests on the show. And so you are now in an elite club of other guests who have already been here before. And we are so excited to have you back on the show. Thank you so much for coming today.
Oh, I'm thrilled. It's so good to see you, and I'm excited to have our conversation today.
Well, and so for listeners who can't see us, Joe is not here today. So we could kind of go rogue, Leah. Like we could basically do whatever we want while the cat's away. um, but since your last time on the show, we now have icebreaker questions. And so I want to know, what do you wish you had known before becoming a solopreneur?
Oh my gosh. How much time do we have? No, I'm kidding.
I've asked.
I think, yeah. I think the main thing is kind of the isolation and loneliness factor. And I know that sounds kind of negative, but I think, I grew up on teams, just growing up on teams, having teammates, and then just even kind of my first, jobs out of the gate, you had a team. You had people to bounce things off of. You had people that knew the acronyms and the slang or whatever, and you could just kind of speak your own language with them. And so I think when you kind of venture out on your own, it's incredibly exciting, but it's kind of you're this island sometimes. And even just sometimes explaining all the layers to someone is almost sometimes more energy than it's worth. And so I think it's so important to just find your tribe and find those people that you can kind of cut to the chase and be vulnerable with, and that kind of really can be that support network. And I think that's something that you have to create when you're on your own, where sometimes it's kind of built in before.
Yeah. Oh, we always say flying solo in business doesn't mean you're alone because it can feel so isolating. So whether it's a tribe of supporters or contractors or whatever, find those people because you can take on so much as a solopreneur, which is the perfect segue into our question. So you have a new book and I can't wait to dive into that. But we're going to be talking about that most of this interview. But how do you define being a serial fixer? And what patterns or behaviors do you see most frequently among people who kind of relate to this label?
Yes. And there's many kinds of serial fixers, but serial fixer fixing itself is really jumping in. It comes from a good place, but it's jumping in with kind of this quick, hard left where you are putting yourself in the role to fix and solve. And you're setting yourself up to take almost false ownership or stock in relationships and conversations. And the downside of this is that, it can fuel kind of these micro codependencies, is what I like to call them, whether it's in families and relationships, in our professional life. And you can see where if we're constantly showing up as, in fixer mode, in solver mode, this is a perfect recipe for exhaustion, perpetual exhaustion and burnout and compassion fatigue. And it really does, Carly, come from a good place generally where we want to soothe, we want to accommodate. We also have this egocentric component where it helps us feel purpose. It helps us feel productive. It helps us feel this sense of connection with people. And these aren't all negative things, but it's almost like we look and seek and latch onto these opportunities to just kind of weasel our way in and kind of take this ownership when it's really might not be ours to fix and solve.
Yeah, absolutely. But what's hard, you were saying it feels good to help all those people. It feels good to take on all of those roles. So as someone who's committed to like empathizing with other people and be like, I'm here for you, I feel you. How do you guard against kind of compassion fatigue? Are there any like habits, boundaries, daily rituals? Tell me everything because I've definitely fallen guilty to all of this.
And you nailed it. I mean, I see that, people with generally higher levels of compassion and empathy and kind of a high EQ tend to fall into serial fixing. And you can be 5 steps ahead of something. You can walk into a room or a dynamic or a situation and kind of assess needs and start to already problem solve and be there and kind of execute. And I think one of the biggest tools or tactics or reframes or things that you can even start today is just starting to collect data on yourself, really in how you show up in conversations and in roles. And so the first step, really, if you think about becoming more of a supporter rather than a solver, like support, don't solve, it's really that validation piece. And I think we forget this, whether it's professionally and personally, is that when someone is sharing something and, there's some emotion interwoven with it, maybe they're expressing their hurdle or problem or just like some distress or just a sigh can be triggering. Like it's like, what's wrong? What's wrong? How can I help? And so sometimes just meeting that person where they're at, validating, which doesn't necessarily mean agreeing, but means that you are basically putting effort towards trying to decode and understand the message that this person is saying verbally and non-verbally. And that's where you start. It's not about, well, when I was in this position, or maybe you should do this, or you know what, let me just send that email for you. You look incredibly stressed. It's validating like, no, that does sound like a busy week. Or no, I could see where you feel like everything is closing in on you. It's validating and then letting them kind of work how the conversation is going to go. We see this all the time in parenting too, right? Where it's like our kid might be like, oh, and we're like, well, call them, I'll fix it, let's this, here's eat something, do that. And we start to go into this fixer mode because it fuels this part of us that confirms like we're being a good parent or we're being a good leader or we're being this. And as solo entrepreneurs, we are constantly shifting roles. And if we're constantly putting ourselves into the fixer and the solver, it's exhausting even thinking about it.
It's so exhausting. It's funny. We have a monthly event called Solopreneur Problem Solvers, where solopreneurs come and bring one problem that they're trying to solve in their business. And then they go into breakout rooms and they try to solve it together. And our MC always kicks it off with don't should all over everybody. Because it's so easy to say, well, you should do this. Well, you should do that. I did this. You should try this. And it's like, don't should. Listen. Basically, everything that you're saying, it's weird that that's human nature to should all over people.
Yeah. So, and the brain is, this is how our brains typically work, is when someone says something, we immediately pull from our catalog and how we've compartmentalized things, and we immediately relate. We pull that out like, ooh, I vacationed there, or I know someone who has that, or I did this. And that's how the brain works to make sense of things. But I think we are prematurely acting on it, relating. And if you really think about it, we are not giving people the opportunity to kind of get their own repetitions in, to get some of those processing skills in themselves with some of the support and the questions we can ask. We kind of tend to jump in, solve, fix, give quick advice, relate, and off we go. But we can see how this sets us up for overextending, for, these, again, micro codependencies. And we catalog as humans like, Bill over there, Tyler over there, Jan over there, she can do this for me, he can do this for me, he can do that. Okay, my energy is dispersed here. We do that as people. And it's not that we're always taking advantage, but that's kind of how we operate so that we can, manage our energy flow. And so I think that's a huge, huge component of it. And serial fixing is really understanding how you show up to things and what you're truly motivated by.
Well, and one big thing that you mentioned in the book is your inner critic. And we were just talking about that offline before we even pressed record. Can you unpack what that means and how tuning into that inner voice, that critic, can support healing rather than undermining it?
Yes, that's a great question. And really, I talk a lot about like external boundaries, but in order to do that, we have to set internal ones first and really do the work and align and understand kind of those internal drivers. And I think the main ones, kind of those protective properties that are very loud and constantly kind of talking to us or critiquing us, are the inner critic, the inner pleaser, and the inner rescuer. And the inner critic is, we all have one. Some are fiercer than others, but it's kind of that part of you that does not want you to stagnate, that wants you to be the best version of yourself that you can be. And this sounds great, and it is. And this part of us is generally working incredibly hard, right? So we think about that in terms of recovery, rest, setting boundaries. It all sounds well and good. But when we maybe have that block of time, or we're thinking, I'm going to clock out at this time, or I don't need to answer this email right away, people can wait. Guess who shows up? Your critic. Like, well, if you don't answer right away, or if you're not available, if you don't work right now and get ahead, we're going to pay for that. We're probably going to lose that relationship. People are going to think we're lazy. We're probably, we're not working to our potential, and this whole thing's going to blow up in our face. And so you can see how that self-sabotage internally with these different parts of us that are motivated by very different things have conflicts. And our first intuition oftentimes, and I know I've had to really work on this, is to really judge and try to shove these parts of ourselves down. Like, I hate this part of myself. Why am I like this? Is anyone else like this? Like, what's wrong with me? And we try to distract and use Band-Aids and kind of cover it up. And that part of us comes back with a vengeance and, may visit us at 2 a.m. It may sabotage our sleep, all those things. And so I really talk about, rather than shutting it out, think about a way that you can align with it, understand it, show appreciation for this part of you that keeps you motivated, that keeps you going. And it's just working too hard. It's not allowing space for other parts of you that you really desire. And so it's really, I'm inviting everyone listening to have conversations with yourself. And I know that sounds like really, but it's about that self-soothing. It's about really understanding, what is this part of me motivated by? What is it so fiercely trying to protect me from? Which is typically a universal feeling or feelings that humans do not like embarrassment or isolation or shame, a failure. And you really understand that. And then you can look at ways to try to work with it and soothe it and take micro risks and meet yourself halfway. And that's really how you start to set these internal boundaries, start to soothe those parts of yourself, and then you can, operate more in more of a flow state without these perpetual exhausting cycles.
Yes. Okay. So you've mentioned boundaries a few times. So I wanna dive into that a little bit more, because I think it can be really hard for people to set healthy boundaries. And so do you have any strategies or mindsets that make boundaries sustainable? And I know that when I set too many boundaries, like I kind of feel guilty about it. Like, is there a way to not feel that way?
There you go. And so that guilt that you feel, when you maybe have this grand plan and you block your time and you think, these are the boundaries I'm going to start setting. This is when I'm going to start delegating. This is what I'm going to start doing. And then that guilt that you feel of like, ooh, is this okay? Is this really how I operate? Are people going to think this or place me now in a different category because of this? There's this fear of judgment and all these things. And that guilt of like, do I really need this? I should be spending my time doing this because the family would benefit, or my customers would benefit, or, these people would benefit. That guilt is your inner pleaser. That part of you that's like, I want to protect myself against any negative judgment, any disconnect, anyone not liking me anymore. And so it's really, again, understanding where that guilt comes from, where those parts of you are really what they're motivated by, what they're trying to protect. And that's where you start. And if you really think about, I'll give the scenario of, let's just take someone that over the weekend, they're like, enough is enough. I really need to kick myself a gear when it comes to my workouts. I haven't done them for a while. I need to stop eating this. I need to do this. And they come in with some rigidity and full force of this whole grand plan of how they're going to get up at least 4 times a week at 6 a.m. They're going to get their workout in. They're going to do X, Y, and Z, make that smoothie, all the things. And they're really excited about it. And they have this plan. And this is great. And comes 6 a.m. on Monday morning, their alarm goes off. And another part of them rises and says, but we're really comfortable. We didn't sleep great. And we know how we are. If we kind of don't sleep great, we might not be firing on all cylinders. We might not be great in that meeting. And really, does it make a difference if we work out in the morning versus the afternoon? Maybe we should just wait on this, reevaluate. And you can see where that part was trying to protect and be motivated by something totally different than that part of you that had the reins over the weekend. And that's frustrating. And then our critic, and when we don't get up and work out, our critic steps in later in the day and is like, why the hell didn't you work out? We're doing this again. Why don't you take care of yourself? This is crazy. And you're going to, gain 500 pounds in the next 2 days. And here we go. Right? And so it's dramatic, it's over catastrophized, but these are how these parts operate. And so really when you start to kind of really untangle these things, your plan then is to meet yourself in the middle. And that's when you're like, maybe this side of me was a little overzealous, a little bit intense, but I love I love what this part of me really is after. And this part of me over here is protecting my peace, protecting my sleep, protecting this, which I'm grateful for too. I appreciate it. Let's find a way to meet in the middle here. And maybe, let's start so we can build and soothe both of these parts so they're not, at me. And that's how you start to build this inner harmony, by understanding what the drivers are. It's not by dismissing, it's not by, all this like cycles of self-shame. It's really uncovering what the drivers are with these loud parts of you that can be incredibly distracting.
I'm so glad this is being recorded because if I weren't the one interviewing you, I would be like writing every single word you're saying down. It's so helpful. Okay, you use the phrase stop rescuing, start empowering. And I feel like everything you've been saying has kind of like funneled down into stop rescuing, start empowering. Can you give an example here of what you mean by that?
Yeah, sure. So think about like even the oldest time in the HR field. And I know we're so, but I think about this with like the open door policy, or even, as we're, working on our own businesses, think about how we're just like, I'm always available. I'm working on a project and someone calls in, and I'm going to just totally interrupt myself and answer and feed into these urgent things. And so think about too, like when we stop rescuing, when we stop absorbing ownership of things, when we stop going immediately into like, oh my gosh, I got to put out this fire. And we start by giving people sometimes a little bit of space. We don't have to respond right away. And I know people listening to this are going to be like, oh my gosh, yes, you do. But thinking about collecting your thoughts, thinking about how many times I've been meeting with a client, meeting with a patient, someone, and they, will text me with some sense of urgency. And I will say, this sounds really important. I'm working on this, or I have another meeting. Let me circle back with you in a few minutes or find a time later this afternoon. That right there is validating, but it also gives that person an opportunity to have some of their logic kind of work with their high emotion. And so you're still there, you're still validating, you're still supporting, but you're not coming in and just again soaking up urgency, fire, this, that. And like, this is how a lot of us define that we are productive. This is how a lot of us define like it was a busy day. I must have did what I'm supposed to do, but I'm exhausted and I have no space left for anybody else. And so it's empowering other people as well to get their repetitions in, to keep ownership. Carly, if you like envision a ball of yarn, like ball of yarn is not that heavy. But think about if you were trying to untangle everyone's ball of yarn and everyone was throwing you their ball of yarn and you're left to that. I'd love it if we kind of visualize everyone keeping their ball of yarn. And maybe as a leader, as a solo entrepreneur, like we're just pulling at threads. We're helping, we're supporting, we're not solving, we're not fixing, but we're there, still leading with empathy and compassion and support.
Oh, I just love all this so much. And I just think it's so important for solopreneurs. But it's funny, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, wait a second, this all resonates with me. Am I a serial fixer? I didn't know that. Oh my gosh, this is me. But let's say they feel stuck or ashamed. What would you say? What would the smallest first step be that they can take to move away from that thought and get them unstuck?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like again, I will just reiterate that serial fixing tends to come from a very good place generally. And I do highlight different types of it. And sometimes serial fixing can come off as very controlling. But again, it's generally that person trying to protect themselves from someone else or judgments or not being helpful enough or, just not doing their role good enough. And so I think first and foremost, it's really understanding if you are feeling like, oh my gosh, this is totally me. You're not alone, number one. I see this all the time. I'm a recovering one. Well, maybe not even recovering.
Serial active one.
Myself. Yes, I might be active in a lot of ways, but it's just understanding like this is such a thing in so many facets of our lives. And I think we can do better. We can change this. And so again, like as I mentioned in the beginning, it's really understanding and collecting that data and just being self-aware of how you show up to conversations with friends, with, family, professionally, with clients, with people you're working with. Like, how do you show up to that? And are you catching everyone's ball of yarn? Or are you just helping people and really staying and identifying what your true role is? And you can see where that's where it's going to diminish and just kind of decrease when we walk away for certain interactions, just feeling like overwhelmed. I think we can limit that. So I think that's one of the first things, and really just, I think that's it. It's just that self-awareness piece is going to be a great way to just start.
Leah, you can be on this show every week. I feel like this is something that people need to listen to on repeat. And I have no doubt that you'll help them find success in this area. So we have to ask you, and we asked you this last time, but you might have a new one. What is your favorite quote about success?
Oh my gosh, it's probably going to be the same one, but I don't know. But my go-to one is always, you miss 100%, so 100% of the shots you don't take. And I think that's my critic, probably coming from my critic, right? Like, you better do it, Leah. You better take the shot. You better
Coming from a true athlete.
That's right. From a basketball player's mouth. But I think that has just, I mean, obviously it resonated with me on the court, but it resonates with me in life, where it's just like, I've had to tame the critical part of me, of just like, what if you fail? What if you screw up? What if you're embarrassed? What if this? And it's like, but that, if I misstep or if I do this, like, I would much rather do that, with the chance that I'm going to nail it. And it's also going to open up so many other opportunities for growth and connection. And I think, it's really helped me. It sounds like a very black and white, all or nothing quote, but it's really helped me see the gray.
Oh, I love that. So great. Leah, tell us when your book comes out, tell us how to buy it, and tell us where people can find you if they want to learn more.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it comes out November 11th. It's been, you can get it at pre-sale, or pre-order rather, and you can go to serial-fixer.com or leahmarone.com. And you can find a variety of ways to pre-order the book, whether it's Target or Barnes & Noble or Amazon or all the things, whatever your preference. And yeah, and connect with me. Like, I really have some giveaways if you pre-order. I'm more than happy to support. And, I love getting messages. I love getting feedback, questions. So please connect with me. As you see, I love building my tribe. So if you'd like to be part of it, please do.
Way to do a full circle moment from beginning to end of the show. And with that, I think we should end there. This has been so great. Thank you so much again for coming on today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, please leave that 5-star review, share this episode with a friend, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. And we will see you next time on The Aspiring Solopreneur.